So in this segment, we're going to be talking about Brussels holding the City of London to higher standards than communist China. I mean, this is hilarious. This is so funny, honestly. I lolled reading this article. So, an influential Lords Committee has accused Brussels of holding the City of London to a higher standard than communist China in granting it access to EU financial markets after Brexit. The House of Lords does not understand that granting equivalency is a political decision more than anything. Why would the EU grant us equivalency when it's very clear that they're trying to take financial services out of the UK, especially as the UK is looking at deregulation? China isn't that strong when it comes to equivalency. It could have come off the back of some sort of trade agreement, etc., with China that the EU have, but simply this statement is funny. It's funny. A report by the Lords European Affairs Committee concluded that the EU was playing politics. Oh my God! How could the EU, a political institution, play politics over such an important decision that impacts the UK so much? This is over the decision to lock firms out of the square mile, out of the single market. The bloc has refused to grant the UK regulatory equivalence, and to be fair, given the fact that we're trying to compete with countries like Singapore, and we've openly spoken about it, why would we get equivalence? Especially when the EU Commission wants to take a greater role in kind of regulating, financial institutions, wants to have a lot more oversight over them, considering how much damage financial institutions can do to member states. This permits non-EU countries access to equivalency. So Tokyo and New York would have equivalency with the EU, for example. Countries' access to its markets based on how similar or equivalent its rules are, despite Britain's rules being broadly in line with its own. I think Britain's regulations are typically gold-plated, so they go above the EU's minimum standards. Lord Kinnoul, chairman of the committee, said China has been granted equivalence by the EU in a dozen or more areas. It looks odd and wrong that the UK has not been granted this, considering we are democracies of a similar character. I mean, okay, I thought the EU was undemocratic, though. That's what Brexiters say, so I guess we're undemocratic then. I mean, again, it's a political decision. The report found that the EU's decision was political rather than technical. The UK is being held to a higher standard than other countries. I mean, that's, it's up to the EU to do that. There's a reason why we granted the EU equivalency, because we didn't want to lose traders. It comes as the bloc attempts to engineer a raid on the square mile by forcing its financial service companies to shift lucrative activity and staff from London to the continent. Effectively, the subsidiaries that these companies want to set up in the EU have to be staffed and have to have a certain amount of capital. They can't just be, kind of empty kind of plaques. Miles Selleck, chief executive of the City UK, a lobby group, told the Lords Committee there's always been a degree of politicisation to equivalency. Lord Kinnoul said the equivalency decision and a memorandum of understanding on financial services between the EU and UK caught up in the Northern Ireland Protocol debacle. And to be fair, why would the EU give us equivalency when we didn't messing around with the protocol? We've already seen our protocol decisions mess up our application to Horizon, which is something I'll talk about in a few days / maybe a week. It's ridiculous. Lord Hill, a former EU commissioner who led a review last year of the UK's listings rules, told the committee the EU, think that an equivalence decision is a plum to give, and why would you give that before you want to give it and in exchange for something else? Effectively saying that equivalency decision is not. It's more than just. It's kind of it benefits the UK, and so why would they want to do something that benefits the UK without getting something in return? Especially when we've been playing games over the protocol. I mean, that's a decent statement from Lord Hill. He also said the war in Ukraine highlights how democracy should work together. This is where he gets really stupid. When it comes to financial regulations, what we have seen during the current crisis is that financial systems, the payment system, is part of defence and security, which is true, but that's something the EU have governance over because of SWIFT. SWIFT is based, I think, in Belgium, and so it gives the EU powers over it. The simple fact is the UK have done very little to adhere to our own sanctioning rules when it comes to dealing with oligarchs in the UK. Let's not forget that a lot of them managed to pull out their assets before the UK dropped a lot of the harsher sanctions on them, and they mocked us for it as well. So, financial services or the financial system, the payment system, is a large part of, sanctions against dictators and, aggressive countries. But the simple fact is the UK have not used our powers properly. We've not used the powers we had at all. Peter Bevan, a partner at city law firm Linklater's, weird name, said it seems extraordinary, really, when that Europeans and UK counterparties want to trade with each other, they have to go through another continent to find a venue to do so. I'm assuming he's talking about New York there. The report also found that challenges the UK's financial services sector has retained its resilience, but added that the government should not be complacent about regulatory scrutiny and jobs moving from the UK to the EU. Essentially, not Mark Carney. He was going to smear Mark Carney. Like, God, what an idiot. Not Mark Carney, me. Andrew Bailey has complained continuously about jobs moving to the EU from the UK. And the thing is, he has nothing he can do to really stop them. Separately, the Treasury Select Committee has launched a subcommittee to scrutinise new post-Brexit regulatory proposal changes for the financial services. It comes after MPs last week warned Sunak that Brexit is not an opportunity to turn the city into Singapore on the Thames, when I thought that's what they wanted. I thought that's what Brexiteers and MPs wanted, to turn us into a Singapore on the Thames. Mel Stride, chairman of the Treasury Select Committee, said, following the UK's exit from the EU, our regulators have assumed significant new responsibilities. Parliament has an opportunity to put in place a process which is less bureaucratic and significantly more nimble than was previously the case in the European Union. But if we start deregulating, how do we hope of getting equivalency? It don't make sense. The EU are looking to reform Solvency II, amongst other things. They are holding not hearings, but kind of more conversations. I can't remember the exact word they use, but conversations with traders and firms to see what can they do to kind of entice them to move their business from the UK to the EU, which is absolutely fair game. It's very much up to the EU how they want to play this. Obviously, deregulation comes with its own costs, looking at 2007-2008 financial crash. But, the arguments that these Brexiteers are making is ridiculous, given that we're playing, really dangerous games over the protocol. The simple fact is that if the EU want to grant us equivalency, they can. There's a reason why Tokyo and New York have equivalency, because these are, two of the major stock markets in the world. The reason why they gave China equivalency could be a whole host of reasons. But the simple fact is, it's ridiculous for the UK to cry about it. My advice to these lords, to Andrew Bailey and to everyone else who voted Brexit and is mad about this, cry more. I'll catch you guys next time. Support me on Patreon. And yeah, if you're mad, cry more.